So the first agenda item is we took the roll call just to reconfirm. It's Eric, Micah, Alan, Stephen, Randy, and it's a quorum.
That is correct.
Okay, great. And then is there any public input tonight?
Hey, real quick, I know this is the first one, so I would say just do the call to order saying, hey, we're convening October 12th, 7 p.m., approximately whatever time we call the meeting, and then we'll kind of go.
Also,
Okay.
sorry, but there looks like there is two people that are just audio only, like Fed and Irwin. They're not on camera, so I just want to make sure that they were accounted for. That's all.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, I have them down for New Roads and
Cool.
Crossroads.
Oh, I don't even see those people.
Yeah, the camera's not on, but they might be at practices or other stuff going on because there's still sports going on all the way to 9 o'clock.
Don't worry, I'm here, guys.
All right. I talked to Federico earlier at airport when he was at airport.
Okay, but I don't see where are those folks listed that aren't.
To the right, there's an arrow that goes left to right. If you click on that, you'll see a list of all the names. I'll send a screenshot to you, Dan.
Oh, I see it. All right.
See you, Dan?
Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you. Because if anything, I can do the roll call, Dan, and turn it over to you after you call to order if that makes it easier, or you can just have you do that.
Yeah, that's fine, Eric. Thanks.
Okay. So once you do the call to order, then we'll get going.
Call to order at 7:09 p.m. on October 12th, 2022.
Perfect. So I'll do the roll call. So off of our list, as you can see here, we do have New Roads School here, and we have Irwin, who is the assistant athletic director. Irwin, how do you pronounce your last name? Is it Morozin?
Yeah, it's Morozin.
Morozin. Okay, he's the assistant athletic director at New Roads.
How do you spell that?
I think I'll spell for it. Oh, you got it, Irwin?
Yeah, I could do it. It's Morozin as in zebra, I-N.
Okay. And when'd you come on, Irwin?
I'm here to I'm filling in for Steve today because the athletic director, he had some family stuff, so I'm just sitting in, listening
Right.
to him.
I mean, when did you come on to New Roads?
Oh, when? Oh, I've been here for 8 years.
Okay, cool.
Next, I'm just going to go on the list that I see. We do have Stephen Johnson, who is also with Rec and Parks Commission, but also represents Santa Monica Rugby Club. So
here.
So Santa Monica, Academy of Lacrosse Dragons.
Here.
We have Santa Monica Girls Fast Pitch.
Here.
Okay, and that is Alan Jerkins. His camera's on, and Randy Grube for Academy of Lacrosse. We do Crossroads Middle High School.
Quiet.
I think we have Federico here. We heard Federico earlier, so he is here.
I'm here. My bad. Couldn't find the mute button.
No worries. And we have AYSO.
John Tuttle here.
Yes, Vice Chair. And then we do have, that's you, Dan Campbell, Chair, and also Santa Monica Pony. I believe I got everybody correct. Yes.
Anybody help me out on how to get the earphones to work instead of going over the laptop microphone?
Probably just your computer and Bluetooth connections.
Yeah, the Bluetooth would be the way to go for that. So.
Yeah, but
or old school.
I don't know.
Yeah, just plug into the side. Yeah.
Maybe your TiVo will help.
All right, that's what. No, you actually have to click something. You can't just plug it in. Zoom did the same thing. It's like you can't plug in your headphones and it automatically detects it. Now you have to click a button to make it happen.
Okay, so that's everybody here. That's everybody here, and we do have a quorum. So everyone is a voting member, so it's not a lot, but we do have enough to have a quorum. So we can move on. Public input, as you mentioned, Dan, we don't have anything from public input.
Right.
So we are there.
Okay, and then the second is new business. The action. So Steve was generous enough to let us know about the new Memorial Park Master Plan update that was presented to Rec and Park at their last meeting, which is a little bit more detailed. Eric, can you throw it up, or is it?
Yeah, I can. I was just going to say that I can put that and share my screen. Just give me a second.
The order was that it was presented to FSAC. It was then presented a little more refined to Rec and Parks. And then the final version, which I think is what you have, was what was given at the city council meeting. So the version that we shared and looked at was the city council version. And that was the most detailed I've seen yet. It had a lot of information in it that we might have didn't see in the earlier versions. Yeah. A lot of graphics, a lot of good graphics.
Yeah, hold on, I'm trying to share this thing here. I was able to do it earlier in the test run.
Just check and make sure it's 135. Sorry.
And then I can start cutting it up.
Darn it. Well, if you want to continue with it first, let me try to fiddle with it. So if you want to talk a little bit about it, Stephen and Dan, and let me try to fiddle.
Yeah, the biggest takeaway for me was on they wanted to secure the funds from SMC, the $20 million. So they're allowed to talk to them. I talked to a few of the SMC board members last week, and everything seems to be on track for staff to talk to them and contribute that $20 million for the redesign. I'm hoping to have John Smith was at that meeting, and I'm hoping to meet with John, this week. I was out of town this weekend, but I texted him, and hopefully we can walk through Memorial Park and just kind of see if the plan is, what Recs and Parks kind of envisions, what the community envisions, and what, I think Marianne has always been supportive of, it's time for the Diamond Sports. As you guys all know, I'm all about youth athletics. I am partial to baseball, and I'd like to get a little bit more input before they actually go to council again to approve the redesign with the money that we have now, because that's the biggest issue is what are we going to do with the funds that are available now?
Real quick, I think I got it. Can you guys see it on the screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, let me go. I'll start scrolling through. You can kind of be in the driver's seat, Dan or Steven, and have me go through the slides if that works.
Sure. You can go through the next one. So there was a lot of conversation about, the playground or no playground, grass or turf. And I think those are kind of the biggest issues going into the limited budget and limited redesign plan to accommodate all of the groups out there. And of course, the pickleball group has been pretty vocal about having access, and I'm hoping we can talk to, the airport about maybe accommodating them on a lot of space that's open, over there. Gleam Davis kind of brought that up, and I thought that was a great idea.
One question I wanted to raise with this group, because you guys are closer to this than I am. During the conversation, Phil, in open questions, asked, would it save any money or any time to go with dirt and grass for one of the new fields versus turf, like out of the gate, knowing that eventually it'd probably have to be turf. But
why eventually does it have to be turf?
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that he asked the question, why wouldn't it save money? The answer, if you will watch the video, the answer came back from staff that said, well, they've done all this research and so on and so forth. But all of the research I think they cited was related to the rectangle fields and not necessarily baseball, softball. So I'm not sure the question got answered, but Phil put forth that question of like, would it not save money to just for the interim solution just go with grass and dirt for the new fields?
Right.
And if there are objections to the turf, I'd say there's still an opportunity to get the word out about that.
Right. I think the real issue in that conversation was, hey, there's a lot of value to having dual use fields with turf. That makes a lot of sense. However, in town, there's not one CIF approved or MLB size field in the city at the high schools or at our parks. Zero. And so when Phil talked about, grass versus turf, I am not up to speed on that, and I would love to find out who is, but, we've replaced jams already in less than 10 years. We've replaced airport already in less than 11 years. And we're throwing equipment and chemicals down to clean those turf fields. And from staff at that meeting said, as far as expense, the maintenance of it, it's a wash. It's about even. So just from that comment, I'm inclined to say, let's at least have one CIF approved baseball diamond in the city with grass. That would be my attitude on that. Does that make sense?
And you're speaking from the city parks point of view, or is the baseball field at Samuel High also not CIF approved?
No baseball field in the city of Santa Monica is CIF approved. Zero.
Okay.
And as far as my comments, I'm just commenting on what staff said back to Phil about turf versus grass. And again, I'm not well versed in that, and I would love to speak with somebody about, what are the benefits of each. I mean, clearly turf, you can redesign the turf to be multiple sport. But if we're to believe, the support that the Diamond Sports has given to the rectangular field sports over the years, in particular Belmar Park, that, hopefully I think Marianne's a good supporter of, hey, Diamond Sports are due, and at least in this one particular aspect, we should probably consider how Rex and Park are going to put their input with council along with staff. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah. I mean, mainly we want to get all the feedback we can in time to get it in front of folks.
Sorry, quick question. Are we talking about just the grass versus turf, or are we talking about having something that's CIF size?
We're talking about a couple of different issues, Randy, is whether there's support or not. It seems like there's support at Rex and Parks for baseball diamonds. There is not a single baseball diamond in the city, either from Santa Monica Malibu USD or a city field that is CIF dimensional or approved, period. That
was my question. So I just have a question because I don't know. I'm all for the baseball fields, but we also don't have a single regulation size lacrosse field in the city. And I don't know what it's like for soccer. I don't know if we have any FIFA fields, and I don't know if we have any regulation size rugby fields. So if CIF, if we're going to create a standard, I'm okay if we can, I don't know. I mean, obviously the reason there's no CIF size field anywhere is because we don't have the space. But I'm just asking, if we're going to start creating CIF as a standard, regulation size as a standard, and we got to look at, it opens a can of worms because then everybody's going to want a regulation field.
That's right. I agree with that, and as, the airport begins to open up, and as that land begins to open up, I'm pretty sure that we can start talking about that there too. as far as the Memorial Park master plan is concerned, that's always been, from at least the time I've sat on FSAC, was, specific to the diamond sports. So, the other thing is there's only, that I've heard from other groups, is there's only 2 football fields in town, SMC and Samo High. There's a football field layout at Jams, but there's no goalposts, and the end zone is about 2 feet away from the fence. So, there are issues with the playing fields, and I'm surprised that when Belmar Field was built, that there wasn't a consideration to make it also a dimensional lacrosse field.
It does have a lacrosse overlay at Belmar, and I believe they did reach out to the representative.
Yeah, no.
So, Eric, is that true? Is there not?
Vikings and Dragons. No.
Right. Is there not a CIF? Is there not a CIF dimensional field in the city for lacrosse?
Belmar probably is the closest one to it.
Well, is it or not?
It is. The Santa Monica High School hosts their games there.
Okay,
yeah,
so
lacrosse has an exemption to play because there's so many non-regulation fields.
Exactly.
That lacrosse has an exemption to play on non-regulation fields. It's just practical. I'm not saying everybody needs to have. I'm just asking, basically, my point is I'd like to support whatever you guys support in terms of diamond sports. So if you're saying instead of having, say, 3 smaller diamonds, you'd want a regulation diamond, and if you think that's good for the diamond sports, then I'll support what you support. But I'm just trying to understand what we're saying. I just don't want to open a can of. Lacrosse is not advocating for a regulation-sized field. We don't need it. We've been doing without a regulation-sized field for however 10 years, 11 years. It's been going fine. So we're more about getting practical solutions and getting practical space for everybody to use, so we have as much space as possible. The actual size, we can work with sizes. That's not a big deal.
And speaking in regards to a lot of the dimensions, because we've done a lot of different stuff for all the high schools, at least at Santa Monica High School and everything else, there's no specific thing. They follow the National Federation of High Schools. I want to say it's NFHS or NHFS. There's a desired dimension, at least you have to have some minimums. So once you meet those minimums, technically it's allowed by all high school fields. And I'm assuming that's the same thing for you guys, Randy. If you have at least the minimum size, you're eligible to play. Obviously there's a desired size, but at least the minimum is this. And I think all the high schools follow at least the minimum. I understand at Samo High, left field and center field are ridiculously long. Right field is roughly, 280, if that. So I understand there's specific desired dimensions. And if you go to Marine, it's 300 to left and it's 500 to center and 350 to right. So it's all over the place. Crossroads has that temporary fence that we set to the right dimensions. Maybe the backstop's a little off. It needs to be brought in a little bit, as we know. But all of them fit technically within, and maybe they have those exemptions. So, but at least distances wise, I know backstops, even for softball, it's a little off here at Memorial, which is hence we're trying to modify those, at least meet the minimum, because we've done a lot of the planning on the back end from years ago prior to COVID. Obviously, those could change as far as at least the minimum backstop, space between the dugouts and that and everything else. So there's specific guidelines that we're following. It goes off of what the high school, NFHS, I believe, recommends. CIF follows that as well, too. So it's kind of obviously diamond sports is a focus of Memorial Park, from what all the moving for, and that's plans to be the case. So it's just in regards to just following those regulations. It could have changed 2 or 3 years from when we had those plans, but as we get closer, we'll have to make sure we tighten up those up and make it,
so
at least minimum.
Eric, I think you're making a really good point, and I guess I have a question. And I actually really appreciate what Randy is saying, which is once we start advocating for CIF sport field dimensions, we are purposefully or inadvertently setting a standard that we will find ourselves chasing as we have conversations about additional field space that may be coming available in the next 10 to 15 years. My question is, when you look at the dimensions at Memorial Park they are incredibly finite, and the ability to fit in somewhere between 2.5 and 3 fields is, to the inch at this point. given the dimensions that from the previous iterations of the design and the funding available. Are we talking about adding a CIF dimension diamond court location at the expense of the third field, or is there actually the square footage there?
I think it would be at the expense, unfortunately.
Right.
I don't know what's changed. Well, I mean, obviously when we get closer to it, it would be at the expense of it, to be quite honest, just from looking at the schematic.
We don't know that. We don't know that.
I mean,
nobody's laid that out.
I know the dimensions of 1 and 2, and I know the dimensions of 3 and 4. I know adding any
Right,
little
and you have to put in the lumberyard on that, and we don't know that. We don't know.
Okay.
Because if we're going to put in the master plan originally had 2 60-90 fields in it, this would still have the 2 60-90 fields in it, you know, whether it's turf or grass and multi-use. So all we're advocating for, or I'm not, all I said was that there was a consideration from Counselor whether it's going to be grass or not, and whether there's going to be a baseball field there or not with grass. That was it. So as far as the CIF regulations, that we all work within the minimums there. We're talking about if one of our high schools were to go to a state championship, they could not play at home because it's not regulation. That's all. And as far as Randy's comment is there's not one CIF regulation lacrosse field in town. Eric, you said there was one at Belmar. So,
well, Randy mentioned that I'm not a lacrosse coach. You know, if this high school, Samuel High, was very adamant about having a regulation one, they probably would have got it at Belmar, but it's suitable for what their needs are. So we haven't heard any complaints from them in regards to that. They've hosted all their home games there. They don't host them at Santa Monica High School. They host them at Belmar. So it's met the needs for them for the last 2 years. Could regulations change in the coming years? It changes all the time. I'm not sure if they'll be required to have to play on a bigger field. We don't know. But as the sport continues to grow at the high school level, I'm sure, it possibly could. I don't know. But Randy would be the expert on that. I'm just speaking on, we haven't heard anything from the coaches or the athletic directors at Santa Monica High School saying it's not doable, it doesn't work.
For lacrosse, the issue isn't size, the issue is lines. So what Belmar has that no other field has is actually the proper lacrosse line. So it's not just the creases. So basically the area around the penalty, like in soccer terms, there's a penalty box. Well, so in lacrosse, unfortunately, the dimensions and the crease shape for women's and men's lacrosse are actually different. And the regulation field size for a women's field and a men's field is actually different. It's just stupid. So they have a thing called, it's really dumb. I don't know why it's done that way. And they have a thing called a unified field layout, which the sanctioning body came up with. And the unified field layout actually then takes the two layouts, shrinks them into one, and makes it so that we have one acceptable layout. It's generally not so what we have at Belmar is the unified field layout, which is perfectly acceptable for everything anybody in lacrosse does. It's fine for the high school. Like I said, like there's a field at Marlboro that's not even, it's like 90 yards long. So it's 25 yards too short, and it's only like 45 yards wide. And they play regulation CIF games on that field. Lacrosse just has an exemption for stuff because everybody knows there's not enough fields to play all these games on, especially at regulation size. Like Marlboro is a private school with no football team, so they don't have a big field. So there's a ton of situations like that. So the issue with lacrosse isn't really, is there a regulation size field? Nobody, because 1 week you'll be playing at a school that has a 110-yard field, and one week you'll be playing at a school that has, an 85 or 90-yard field. And you just make do with what there is. The issue is, how good are the lines on the field? And the one thing that's really good about Belmar is that the lines, not just the creases, which is the penalty box and stuff, but the restraining lines, which tells you like where your offense and defense have to stop, and like those types of lines that typically aren't on a field in Southern California, those are at Belmar, which is actually a huge help, especially if you're trying to teach somebody the sport and the actual rules of the actual sport. If you were to go, say, play at a higher level on the East Coast in college, because some kids on the West Coast have never seen a regulation field. Sorry, I'm going on and on here. So the issue is still across. The issue is the lines, and Belmar meets all the requirements for having the right line.
That's awesome.
Only to add just a bit for rugby. For rugby, the same issue is the lines more than anything else. Belmar and Airport Park are close to regulation sizes. They're the right width because rugby is the same width as soccer. And length, we can shorten our end zones and use Belmar or Airport Park, but they don't have rugby lines. And so we have tended to ask to play on like Samo High, for instance, because you can kind of adapt football lines to rugby. The only problem is those football fields, 100 yards long is not a legal size for certain playoffs. But yeah, it lines the problem for a lot of the people. But dimensionally, Belmar and Airport Park are FIFA-sized fields, and it took early advocacy to make sure that happened. So that was an important thing. It was good that it happened that way.
That's great to know. Thanks, Stephen. Anyone else?
Then also Shannon, thank you for joining. Shannon Perry from Santa Monica Vikings Lacrosse. Shannon,
There you go, Shannon. So I wanted to ask then, we could probably talk about this for a long time, but if the main feedback or the main questions you guys would like for me to bring back to Recreation and Parks Commission, and maybe we formulate together what the questions are to ask staff, for more details about this or that. That would be the most productive thing to do. Would be, do we want to say dimensionally what's proposed, and then get a more clarification on the turf versus grass, whether that's a cost savings or if the study previously was focused on rectangle sports as opposed to diamond sports, those kinds of things. Try to get some clarification on what was discussed in the city council presentation. We can take that back. Rec and Parks meets next week, and I'm sure the council will take up the additional. What they gave a vote for was to authorize to enter into discussions to get the money from Santa Monica College. So it could still be a while to get the money, but while that's going on, you could build the case to make the asks to get the clarification on these things. Does that sound like a good plan?
Yeah, I
I
think
have
so.
a quick question. Is there a preference? I obviously am the parent of an avid baseball player, but I myself am not a baseball player. Is there an organizational preference for turf versus grass?
Eric?
can I explain something? Just originally, the reason why those combo fields are turf, it allows you to get this. Okay, you go natural grass. The idea of doing replicating what the high school had done for their baseball and softball, which keep in mind they do not like, is that's why we went with turf. So basically, you can have a 2-field overlay like that 3 and 4. So technically, you get 7 different practice fields with some infield type work. By going natural grass, technically you go back down to 5.
Got it. Okay. So basically, if you go turf, artificial turf, you end up with more playing options for different age groups.
Correct. And I think with that other thing, you can put a fence in the middle. Let me see if I can share the field and share the screen again. Let me see.
Because my recollection, I mean, obviously, like biological habitat, grass is not the greatest source of biological habitat, but it does have some value. It is also obviously we are headed into long-term seasons of drought, and we're also thinking about player health and safety, all of which there's data points in all of those areas for grass versus turf, and so I guess I'm really just trying to get a sense of that.
Well, I guess what's the consensus to everybody? Do you like grass over turf is really the question. And then does that make sense from a maintenance and cost standpoint? I would raise my hand. I like grass. I think, everybody else can chime in to what they think.
I have a question. I've seen some baseball because we've sometimes played next door at jams while there was a Pony League game going on or something. But I don't think I ever saw anybody slide on the turf. Does sliding on turf work?
Yeah.
Like sliding into base?
Yes.
That seems okay?
I mean,
Yes.
you know, turf is great for, I don't really advocate for anything, either turf or grass, but turf is great because number one, you can put different lines in. Number two, you can reutilize the field space for different sports. And you don't have, you know, we put a movable mound out there, so, you know, we can take that away and it's still a flat space. So lacrosse could go there, or rugby could go there, or soccer could go there, or any rectangular sport. So, you know, there's a lot of pros to turf in my opinion, but I also think there should be at least a few things, you know, considered for grass. But, you know, people are just like grass. I mean, you know, whether it's the right thing for the city, I don't know, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we had all the space in the world, we'd all love to have grass, right? But we don't have all the space, and you know, turf makes it much easier. Plus, when it rains, it doesn't, you know, we're not shut down. It can't, you know, there's been times where Memorial's been shut down for 3 days because of rain and drainage, etc., where, you know, that's accessible. Those 3 days aren't lost, etc. So I think you can argue both sides. You know, grass would be ideal, but we just don't have all the space in the world to, as you said, Dan, and as we've talked about, you know, have without the overlays, it makes it very difficult. So.
Well, also, like Shannon said, the drought issue is a pretty real one. I mean, we're going to run out of water at some point to be watering our fields. So if we know that's coming, we should probably plan ahead for that.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the maintenance impacts in terms of cost and staffing and water budgets and all those things will be part of, I think, the city's decision. I think ultimately one of the key values we have here for FSAC is, you know, what's the optimal playing, you know, conditions for primarily for our youth players. And what I hear us saying, and I think I heard Alan say it, is like the value of the turf fields is that they can be multidimensional or multi-sport, is what I hear you saying.
Yeah, I think we all agree that that's, you know,
Yeah.
that's the case. I mean, even Eric said, like, look, with turf, we get 7 fields. With grass, we get 5 fields. I mean, that's a huge difference in regards to the limited field space that we all have in this city and, you know, for all the sports as we try to fit into, you know, these little spaces. So.
Okay, so the points I have to take back to Rec and Parks' feedback is we're wanting to kind of get the fact points about the turf versus grass discussion, and it could be that it's, you know, the detail, you know, they've done study, they've, you know, tried to figure it out. So if we could get that, if that's a piece of paper or something that bullet points what it is, it'd be good for all of us to have, because we have constituencies that think you know, one way or the other, and if it's a done deal, or if it's a strong case to be made one way or the other, then we would have that at our disposal to share. And then the other question is just dimensions. I did not know that there was not a CIF size baseball field in Santa Monica. And again, I'm more of a rectangle person, and so I do happen to know that at least Airport Park and Belmar are legal soccer fields. Notice that the soccer field at Samuel High, you know, which is circumscribed by the track, is not a full size. So we were glad to see Belmar and Airport Park be, I think, about 68 meters wide, which is the right size. So those were the two main things. Is there anything else regarding the deck? And we could obviously share the deck out to everybody, because it's pretty in-depth with a lot of pictures.
Yeah.
That was my question. Are you able to share it via email with us? Because looks like there's a lot of detail in there.
Yeah, it's online too at the last city council meeting, so we
Okay,
can share the
cool.
link or share the presentation.
Only-
Stephen, I'm sorry. You mentioned that has staff done a study turf versus grass just on, I guess like more of an environmental impact point of view?
According to what the response to Phil's question was by staff, it sounds like they have at least some kind of research or some kind of, staff research that was done previously. I mean, if you go back and listen to the wording, it makes me think they've done the work or to make the decision.
If I put a different hat on, I can say that I believe that assessment has been completed and that ultimately the fields in this location were originally programmed to take advantage of the benefits of turf. Eric, do you agree?
Yeah, I know we had decided to do I can share the thing again on the share screen on Blue Jeans. Yeah, it was
Sorry,
sort of
what?
combo.
Oh,
Say that
sorry,
again?
Eric. Sorry, I thought you were done. I thought you paused, so I thought you were done. Sorry, go finish.
Oh no, I'm
Sorry.
just trying to figure out how to share this.
Sorry, there's one caveat I do want to bring up in regards to turf. Again, I'm a grass guy, but I think that turf makes more sense field space wise. But at the same time, have they addressed what if, and I don't know all the details, but Airport Park was shut down for a while because the turf didn't work, it was ruined, whatever. If that happens here for fields 1 through 4, and there's no funds to fix the turf, that is 4 fields that are now off the table. So I just want to make sure that whatever contingency plans are, if they do turf, what's going to happen? Because, again, I believe Airport Park was shut down for an indefinite time and I don't know how it all came back up, but, I don't know if you can add some color there, Eric. But I just don't want that to happen again. It's like, oh, well, turf, it's broken, so we don't have any money to fix it, so it's just going to remain idle.
Well, that was the evolution of turf at Airport Park, and now where we are at technology-wise with turf, I think is well beyond that. So what you're seeing come in, if you look at our turf that we have at John Adams, Lincoln, and Belmar, it all has the cork inlay. This stuff's going to be around for quite a while. It's got, the infill is all environmentally friendly with cork, and I think that problem is pretty much solved. It's just Airport Park had that turf that was kind of in the evolution of turf itself.
Yeah, turf and infills definitely. It was the guinea pig for a lot of stuff. Unfortunately, we died at the test for that. It's been addressed. Unfortunately, It was a decision made, and we know that. I think Public Landscape team knows it as well too. And I know there's been some talks. I can't get it. Like they know they're going to have to replace that in the coming years, and so that's when they'll probably figure it out and come to this group and also Reckon Parks into that. I've done a lot of turf management and everything else. So I'm excited about the technology, like John had mentioned. So I think
as long as there's not an issue going down the road, then I just wanted to bring that up.
I think the technology is so much better now, and the research that's done, and I think now it's just you're investing in the future, so you really have to do your homework on these types of things.
Yeah. Now I'll add to what John said. I come from a very concussion aware sport. We're very concerned about concussions, and the difference between Airport Park and what's at Belmar, what's at Samuel High, a little bit to a lesser extent what's at Jams, it's night and day. The Belmar is the latest, greatest, and it is, if that's the standard moving forward, I think a lot of the contact sports are pretty happy.
Yeah, I mean, I think we feel pretty happy about the environmental and the health and safety standards of the fields now, both from a toxicity perspective and from a head and knee safety perspective. I would love to see a point in time where we are offsetting the loss of natural habitat that our grass fields offer. That we are tracking this in the city and in the places where we are advocating for turf, because it is ultimately the more appropriate material for the degree of programming we have 24/7, 365. I think that there could be a really a leadership model for the city and offsetting that in other parts, offsetting the loss of habitat with other investments. So I wanted to say that. And then the only other thing that I think that we should just, as a group, reinforce, in our comments to Rec and Parks, is that ultimately we want to think about scalability and phasing of Memorial Park. We know that what we're looking at here is a portion of what we had originally planned for and anticipated for Memorial Park. And while this is a great opportunity to bring this portion of this project back front and center and to deliver on Diamond Sports for our community, I really do want us to make sure that, the direction, going to staff and to our, design team is that this is a project whole unto itself, but also a project that is scalable to the things that are lost in this smaller iteration. And I'd just like to see that, comment raised forward.
So when you talk about that was a mouthful. Which
sorry.
No, it's great. It's great. So when you talk about loss of habitat, do you mean because of grass there's loss of habitat?
No, the other way. I mean, grass is not the most biologically diverse habitat we have here, but it is a living ecosystem, and it does provide habitat for, a more diverse biological diversity than turf. Turf is, we can call it whatever we want. It's actually rolled plastic, right? And so I think just being aware that is an offset is important.
Okay. And then the second thing, which I think I got, where you talked about scalability and phasing. So obviously the pandemic impacted what the original master plan was, which was, as far as I'm concerned, what staff did. They went to the community, several different times. There was a lot of input, and now there's even more input because, we're getting back to the new normal, and I think Sue brought up about housing around Memorial Park, and the land being given up by Santa Monica Malibu USD on 16th, and so I understand there's a lot of other considerations that could impact that. So scalability just is, in my mind, is the future of not only the park, but what's surrounding the park. And then the phasing, to me, just sounds like, hey, we had a budget, we lost a budget, we have a new budget, and this is what we can do. And the biggest things from council that I saw were grass versus turf and the playground and pickleball. Were the most predominant at that particular meeting. So is that what you mean by scalability is surrounding area, and phasability is, this is what we had and this is what we can move forward with?
Yeah, and just the subtleties of citing each of those things that we can move forward with, making sure feet matter in what a phase 2 of this project could look like. And so just citing the things in this phase so that we do have options if if we have money to fund future projects, that we haven't, eliminated other options because of what we've put, in place now.
Got it. Oh, thanks.
Hey guys, one more thing to take into consideration. Since SMC is funding basically this entire first phase, I believe their preference is turf, so I think that's going to be considered because they're basically the financier. I'm not saying that it's going to be turf because they want it to be turf, but I think they're going to be given significant buy-in on that because of the financing.
That's a great point, Micah. So how does SMC influence council or staff? Who do you talk? Who's the main person that you talk to there that would influence? Hey, we know there's kind of no strings attached, but we'd like to see this. And who is that person, or who makes those decisions from SMC?
I don't know who's been making those decisions. I would assume the athletic director would be involved, but we can get back to you on that. I do not know who the contact is. And I honestly don't even know if turf is their preference. I know that currently they're playing on turf at John Adams, but from my understanding, that is what they were hoping for.
Okay.
Softball is their priority. Softball is the only sport they're going to be playing on that field.
And technically, because it's a Santa Monica College bond, they do have to have. It's not entirely 100% hands off. They have to actually do something there to make that a legal transfer. So they're going to play some ball there because that's what makes it legal for them to give SMC bond money back to the city to build fields. It's a lot like our joint use agreement, which it's a transfer of GS taxes and YY taxes that essentially gets back to the schools because we have this joint use agreement through the city. But yeah.
Okay. Any other things on Memorial Park? Anyone else? Okay, then let's move to the next discussion items. City staff, winter applications, field closures, and revenue. I guess Eric or Micah, you take that away.
Yeah, so I'll go first, and I'll turn it over to Micah. The winter applications, obviously, we sent those out. And we will be allocating those in the next couple of weeks, so we can gear up for that November 28th to February 5th time. So please expect that by November 1st, all your space to be able to review and get back to me in a timely manner. So we are going through the final 5-6 weeks of fall to be able to do that. So we'll get those to you guys probably in the coming weeks. As far as field closures, as you guys know, we do have some field closures coming up. Those are still on pace to be the deadlines or the timeline. So I'll go those in order. So Memorial, Little League 5 and 6, the youth baseball 5 and 6. That will be closed, I want to say November 22nd through February 5th. Memorial Main, which is fields 1 through 4, will be closed December 5th through January 29th. Los Amigos Park and not the park, but the baseball field will be closed November 29th through February 5th, 2023. Right now, Public Landscape is heading all that. They felt confident with that to be able to accomplish. I believe at the next Rec and Parks meeting, Public Landscape will get into bigger detail into the extent of what the closures will include and what work will be done. I believe that's at the October 20th meeting. That will be Rachel Young, Public Landscape Administrator, who will go over all that information. So once that meeting goes in place, I can send a link to you all so you can check that out so you can see the details of all that different stuff. Obviously, it'll be just basically looking at irrigation heads, obviously potentially laying down new sod, obviously doing any other stuff, herbicides to be able to kill any weeds, any repairs to some of the other stuff. So like I said, they're the field experts. We leave it in their hands in regards to that. So
hey, Eric, quick question. So none of the field closure dates have changed from when you sent out, the applications for the field permits, right?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay.
Okay, then there really won't be any impact. I know, Dan, you had asked about the impact for adult sports and anything else that could impact some of the other fields. Currently, there isn't really going to be any impact right now. I think on a few Mondays in December, the adult softball league will be utilizing, I think, the first 2 Mondays to finish off their season. Once, I think, December 5th hits, the adult softball league will be going quiet until January 30th or whatever that day is after. So we will not be having any adult softball for the weeks. So there won't be any impact on that. Obviously, during winter break, if there's not as many permits going on, any type of field rest is always appreciated for some of the maintenance, because as we gear into diamond sports season, so obviously the weather could have a lot to do with that too. But the adult sports league won't be out there. So for a lot of the diamond sports as they gear up for tryouts. It's like when the adult softball league won't be asking for Marine Monday through Thursday and impacting any potential permit time as we get into
that. Okay, great, thanks.
And then in regards to, let's see, anything else? That's field closures. Anticipated field closures, just a heads up, in the summer, plan on Clover Extension being closed, majority of this. That's been long overdue. We plan on going back to what we did years ago. We'll do rotate a summer closure. It could be either Clover Extension or Marine, or possibly Clover Main in the summer. They might go on a rotating basis, because trying to close everything at winter, they just don't. Public landscape just doesn't have the staffing to be able to do that. And years ago, when I had taken over, we done a summer closure, just because it's a little easier. The sun's good, fertilizer. The more water in you feed, the grass just grows like crazy, and it gets it good and going. So, plan moving forward is to throw in a park here and there during the summers, based on how it's looking. Obviously, if it's holding up pretty well, then maybe we skip that one or change it up. But the idea is to do a closure in the summer, so that way it doesn't impact as much, I should say, most of the stuff. So it might impact some practices, but most of the people, I think we can accommodate most of the other uses at some of our other facilities like Clover Extension, or Marine, if one of the others close, and Memorial as well.
Hey, I have a quick question for you that maybe you know from the years of the closures, but is there take away like winter? Winter is just most optimal because of all of the organizations that want to use fields. It's kind of a slower time. But if we didn't have that, what is the most optimal time to actually shut down a field and let the grass grow? Do you know?
I mean, depending on the turf they throw out there, depending on you kind of use I want to say, don't quote me wrong, I'm not as good as with the natural grass stuff. I'm a little more into turf, like our synthetic turf.
Right.
They use a Kentucky bluegrass and I think a Bermuda. So when they used, from what Chris Oliver, who's the public landscape supervisor, they had done that at Clover, where you kind of give it a little bit of rest. It kind of pops in the water, it kind of grows really quick. And they want to get back to getting that hybrid blend at all of our fields, so that way you cut down the minimal closures. And also, I think they want to bring back fertigation, where the irrigation actually has it feeds the grass, it gives it the nutrients it needs, so it actually cuts down on closures. So they're hoping to get back to that with the reinstated money to be able to add fertigation to all of our natural grass fields. So while it's maybe off season, or maybe we don't have as much use to, it just needs a break every now and then. If we are able to cut down some hours here and there, it cuts down our closures, which we're trying to work on. So, but I believe that's what we're trying to do, that blend. So for that, but
so do you know?
Some of the fields, summer works, but obviously we can't close every field in the summer, because that's where you have the most sun and be able to grow. I mean, but winter helps, at least for diamond sports, because obviously we're not going to do it in the spring where it impacts season. So for diamond sports, this is kind of the more one.
Right.
And since Marine and Clover are very multi-use, it makes more sense to do those in the summer, because a majority of our high intensity sports like lacrosse and rugby don't go until as August or September hits. So it's a good time to be able to shut those down. We feel landscape and us for that. So, and diamond sports is not as effective because they still have stuff, and they still do all-star tournaments and whatever else going on. Soccer does some practices, but then more often than not, they do tournaments, so they're away on weekends. So I think it's a good time to do some of those.
Right. So, the most optimal time of year to rest grass fields is, you think, summer? Or?
I mean, that's just to do the maintenance. I mean, what helps us during daylight savings time is that, rule of thumb with Tom Gurgiola, who was here like years prior, anytime during the winter with daylight savings, when it gets dark at 5, if we can cut down some weekday hours, obviously weekends are shot because it's a public park, so people are going to use it for birthday parties, permits, and everything else. If we're able to cut down maybe some 7 to 9 times, a few days a week, 6 hours of non-use a week adds tremendous life to the grass. So just kind of like, you know what I mean? So that's what we try to do during the winter. Say, for example, if you guys aren't, let's just say, for example, Little League or Pony's not doing anything until January, hey, if we get 2 or 3 weeks of just quiet, that's going to do wonders to the field, because it's just they can just give it a rest, and I can cut out, not schedule lights from 5 to 9 on a few days a week. It's just going to only help and make the fields better for, like, at least in particular, Clover and Marine, as we get into the diamond sports and all that stuff. So.
Oh, that's great to know. Thank you.
Okay. There's a little method behind our madness every now and then.
I'm sure there is. Okay, and then the revenue. So just to explain, I talked with Eric and Mike about this in the past, but there seems to be from council and budgeting. I've talked to the finance department before, and they weren't able to break things out for me about what the FSAC community is contributing, revenue-wise to the city, what the other youth sports organizations are contributing to the city, and what adult sports are contributing to the city. And as you all know, in 2020, I asked everyone in city council and district and FSAC. FSAC, thank you very much, overwhelmingly supported, Fields for Kids at Kid Time, meaning that during the week, kids should have access for fields between 5 and 9. And we can still, and that is not anti-adult sports. That's just a reallocation of when those sports should happen. And it seems the overwhelming thing was, the amount of revenue that adult sports brings into the city. And I would just the reason I asked for that revenue was to compare that to what, the youth athletics is contributing to the city, and to see if there's some kind of compromise we can come to where, for example, in the fall, we can't have a 2-hour practice at Memorial because adult softball starts at 6:50 or 7 o'clock. It is what it is, but I think it's something to kind of look at, certainly in the vein of, Fields for Kids at Kid Time. So, Micah, go ahead.
Well, Dan, I have 2 kids, and I will tell you, I do not think 8:30 p.m. is Fields at Kid Time for my kids, at least. But they're not.
Let me respond to that. So, with the young kids, with the young
5 to
kids,
7, I know, yeah.
They're 5 to 7, 5 to 6:30. With the older kids, it doesn't matter whether you play travel ball, basketball, sports, debate, robotics, whatever your kid endeavor it is. As they get into as early as 10 and 11, we don't like to see it, but certainly by 11, 12, those practices and those times have always been pushed back to 6:30 or later. And I understand it's not ideal, but we live in a town where there's not a lot of field space.
All right. Well, anyway, so Dan asked if we could put together some revenue numbers. It is quite difficult to do, and this I think why Dan had a hard time with some of the other, like the finance. It's rather complicated. But here, I'll give you what we have. So Dan asked for year-to-date, so this is for January 1st through September 30th. I didn't do it till today, but I did through for the Q3, so through September 30th. And you asked for CRD's revenue, but I don't think you care about tennis and gym sports and all that. So we just did field sports. The revenue in total is $820,646.86 so far.
I'm sorry, what was that number?
820,646.
820,646. Okay, and that is
this includes the adult soccer leagues, and then field permits. Adult soccer leagues, adult softball leagues, and then field permits. This includes
adult soccer.
Yep.
Adult field permits.
Hey, Dan, it'd be more helpful if I could just say the whole thing. I can give you the numbers later if you want.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks. Sorry.
So 820,646. Of that, 562,000 is in permits. 90,000 of that is pretty much at Jams. 63,000 is at Lincoln. 46,000 is at Samohi. The rest is at City Fields. Obviously, for the school district fields, we send a lot of that money back in terms of the staffing and lighting fees. Let's see here. I think it's also, though, very important to do total hours, because if you just go total numbers, it is very misleading. So total hours permitted is 18,991 hours of permit time for the through Q3. This just includes youth sports permits, adult sports permits, and city adult leagues. Does not include any City of Santa Monica community classes or camps. I don't oversee that program, so I don't have that readily available. Of those 18,991 hours, a total of 14,217 go to FSAC groups, so 75% of the field time, the vast majority of it. 1,635 hours went to non-FSAC youth groups. That's just under 9%. And most of that was actually over the summer when we had more time available. Adult permits is 1,720, just about 9%. And adult leagues is 1,419, just over 7%. In terms of revenue per group, so youth FSAC, like I said, is 75% of the hours. They brought in $324,000. The average hourly rate for FSAC is $23. Obviously, there's a lot of variables, including lights, whether it's at a staff location, turf or grass. A lot of variables with that. Youth sports non-FSAC was about $59,873. Average rate of 37 per hour. Most of those groups pay a little bit more, and a lot of their hours are at night, so they do have more of that. Adult permits was 163,960, and so their average rate is about 95 per hour. And then the adult leagues was 257,813. 185,000 was for soccer league, 73 for softball league. And the average hourly rate is 181 per hour. Obviously, it's Airport Park. We have 3 games going at a time, so it's a pretty significant revenue. I think that's about it. If you have any questions on that.
No, that's great. Thank you so much. I'll just touch base with you on email, and if you have that on a spreadsheet or a report, that'd be great, and we'll just share that with everybody.
I can put it one. Right now, you don't want to see it. It's my handwriting.
Okay. Believe me, I had several phone calls about just trying to pull that number out of the city budget, and it just seemed impossible.
Yeah, but
so
you can't just go off, as mentioned, you can't just go off the revenue numbers. You have to go off hours used. Obviously, I think you guys are all in a good spot in FSAC because you have 75% of the hours used. Whereas the non-FSAC youth groups, like I said, 9%, and the adult permits 9%, and the adult permits are pretty much 9 p.m. and after, and on weekdays, and then weekends usually like in the evening. Okay. And then the adult leagues is 7%. There is a few other small things like film shoots and special events, so that does take, but it's less than 1% of field time.
Gotcha. All right. Hey man, I really appreciate you putting that stuff together. It's something that I was very curious about, and hopefully that we can down the road come to a compromise on field space for both adults and as you know, they're very passionate, and I was a beneficiary of adult sports when I first moved to Southern California back in 1998.
I think, yeah, they would have a very different idea of a compromise. They would get a little more time than they get because they feel like they get nothing. But yeah, I'm sure we can have that conversation. In terms of revenue and these kind of things, Dan, it would be really good to have these. Maybe we could do this annual right after the fiscal year. The numbers I gave you are for calendar year. Everything we do is fiscal, and that's like what we're budget for. So it's better to go off those numbers for us. This is helpful for you to see it, but I'm just saying, like, it would be a good thing. Maybe we do annually after the fiscal year ends. We could present on that.
I think that's a great idea, and plus, it's been a bit of a different scenario over the past 2 years too. So we have to take that in consideration too. So I know that's a lot. I know that's a lot of work, and thanks for putting that together.
No problem.
Can I just say thank you so much for that? I think it's so important to have. As we all know, data-informed decision-making is like this hallmark, right, of public policy. And I think that is such good information of like the revenue generation that comes from, having adequate youth sport or having adequate, field space. The other thing that I would encourage us to start to think about and maybe to agendize down the line is if we wanted to increase the revenue that comes from our current or future field space, what are some of the amenities that we're missing? I think we all travel to locations to play on in other communities' field space locations. And if we as a field space advisory committee start to think about the things we travel for, whether it's hotels that support overnight apartments or it's co-located fields or things like that, I think that would be a good thing for us as a committee to start to think about, so that if we find ourselves in a position where there is opportunity to interject that, those needs into conversation, we'll be ready.
Hey, Mike, I have a question for you in that regard to what Shannon said, and because it's an election year. So if you look at what, council candidates are saying, it's pretty black and white. Do we support tourism or we don't support tourism? Tourism's bad or tourism's good? And I would probably lean on the side that, tourism funds a lot of what we get, in the city. And is that ever a consideration for community recreation? Because, I spent a last weekend in Arizona, and, it's mind-boggling the space that they have, right? A little jealous. But also, they're generating tourism dollars and they're generating, youth sports athletics, adult sports athletics. And is that does that come down to you guys from, the department heads and from the city manager, like, hey, you guys should think about how you can impact tourism in the city through athletics?
That has never been asked of us, Dan, but I do think when the airport park comes along, that'll be a huge selling point in terms of, if there's 3 fields, the amount of tournaments you can have, and that's bringing people in. And also the good thing for your local kids is they're not having to travel all the time. But yeah, the hotel tax, the, spending money in restaurants and whatever else they're doing in the city, I think it will be a huge selling point for that. I know it was in Irvine with the Great American Park, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But that was part of the selling point, I think, for Memorial too, when we were going to have more fields. But now with this reduced version, I don't think will be as much. But
okay, all right.
I don't know if I can answer your question, but yeah, they're not asking us about tourism too much. But
right. So, but yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Randy.
So just really quickly, just so clarify, because we talked about these numbers were actually super informative, and I like what Shannon said too. But are we as FSAC somehow advocating some kind of a negotiation with adult sports? Is this where this is going? Because this doesn't seem like a really good idea to me. If we're getting 75% of the field space and generating 40% of the revenue, we just keep our mouths shut. I mean, we're getting a pretty good deal.
That would be my recommendation. I think these numbers are pretty eye-popping when FSAC is paying an average of 23 per hour, whereas an adult league is paying 181, about 9 times the amount. Like, we have a great deal in FSAC. We get a significant part of the time. I do think what Dan is advocating for is not like a 9 p.m. adults only, but he's saying maybe we can work a few things out so you can get a 2-hour practice in versus an hour and a half or an hour 15 where it's not really worth it. I think maybe that's where he's not going for a full-on negotiation of, you guys don't get this, but maybe there's some ways we can change things a little bit so it's helpful for the youth groups. But Dan, I'll let you speak on that if you want.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Sorry, hold on one second, just because I have a quick follow-up here, because I don't know. It seems like there's an FSAC angle to this, and then there's an individual board angle to this. And so, like I said, I feel like we're very fortunate to have what we have in the city of Santa Monica, given that there's no space. I think it is working in our favor. I think one thing that we could mention, if revenue ever became an issue, like Shannon said, like there is, or you said it too, like overall economic impact is maybe a better indicator rather than just pure fee revenue, because I know, like, for example, in the spring, we host games, every Sunday, and every host team that comes in gets an email from me while you're watching, because a lot of these parents, they're done after the first game. They don't want to keep watching all these games or sit around. They want to go walk around. So I give them a list of, okay, there's these pizza places, there's the promenade, this is where you can spend money. So every parent that comes into Santa Monica for a game against us, especially in the spring, gets an email that says, here's here's where you park and here's how you can spend money in the city of Santa Monica. So, I don't know I have no idea how to track that, but I'm just saying, like, there's an economic impact that we produce that is beneficial to the overall scenario, which may boost us from roughly 40% of revenue to, to bring the number maybe more in line where we're using 75% of the fields and maybe we're generating 65% of the revenue. I don't know, so these numbers can also just come back to bite us if we're, I'm just saying, let's be careful here.
I'll just throw in there, every time there's an event where we have people parking in the Civic Center parking lot for Belmar, that's money back to the city.
Thank you, Stephen. I preached that and I got nothing back, but thank you.
All day long, every day.
Very good point there.
I think we could probably pull some rough numbers on that if we wanted to.
Yeah, because I mean, I only had a handful of rugby games at Salmon High this summer or this last year, but we had them all park in the Civic Center parking lot because I didn't want to deal with the Salmon High parking because it's hit or miss, right? Sometimes it's closed, sometimes it's open, and I could probably throw down some numbers because they were all adults and they all drove themselves and they're all single car occupants. So I would, we could put a dollar figure on the rugby games, Civic Center parking for sure. Kids, we don't have kids getting dropped off. So everybody who plays in an adult rugby game pays for parking at Civic Center parking lot.
Eric, if you give me the youth field space allocations at Belmar and Samo, we can pull some.
Seriously.
We can pull some.
You could probably pull
number, really quickly. I mean,
correlated.
with a simple regression, we would have a defensible number.
Yeah, you would, because it correlates, right? Of course. Yeah. Weekends where there are no games and the fields are shut down, you'd see a huge dip in parking.
Very
nice.
Very true on that.
Hey, just one other thing I wanted to address, Randy. It's not a personal FSAC agenda, and I had a conversation with every single FSAC member back in 2020 about Fields for Kids at Kid Time, along with every candidate, every council member, and every Rex and Park member. Overwhelmingly, everybody on FSAC, including yourself, supported Kids for Fields at Kid Time. So it's just an initiative to say, hey, can we really reallocate a little more time to kids, at the appropriate time during the week? And that's it. And that's what we're trying to figure out with staff. And as far as the revenue, I mean, I think the revenue budget this year was $627 million for the city, off from pre-pandemic, which is $647 million. And if we want to look at revenue numbers, you're looking at 0.0013% of recreation permits against the city budget. As opposed to getting kids some social emotional intelligence going on, some grit, and some life skills that we all hope our kids grow up to be good citizens. So, that's where that's coming from. That isn't my initiative. That's initiative for the community and for all the sports, not just a particular sport.
I would point out one thing. A lot of what we do in the city is comparison to our neighboring cities. And lots of neighboring cities. I worked in Beverly Hills. Adult sports started at 6:30 over city, and many other sports do start earlier. So that's always a comparison too. It is a tough balance, but just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, no, I get that, but don't we want to be the leaders of the cities, not the followers of a city?
Well, Dan, that's your initiative, but for youth and adult, we have to balance it as best we can.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm trying to do. And I think there was buy-in in 2020, and there seems to be buy-in in 2022.
And I would just say that, in any of these places, let's make sure that we catalog the delta, right? If we know what our neighboring cities are doing, but we also know that youth sports here have to go till 8:30. I mean, my kids are not home from practice yet. they're heading home from Marine Park in the next 10 minutes, right? And my 8-year-old practices until 8 p.m. But let's catalog this delta so that we can figure out what we have good data to advocate as the potential for new spaces comes along.
Okay.
All right, guys, I have to go. I got to go meet with our Santa Monica Pickleball Club. Believe it or not, they like to meet later than FSAC, but a good rest of the meeting. Eric, I think you had one other thing that you're going to bring up on the staff side.
Yes, that is correct. So we okay to move on, Dan? With
Yeah.
the next one? Okay, perfect.
Unless anybody add anything else. Everybody good?
Okay, cool. So one of the things just came to light recently. We just got informed that we can potentially meet in person. So I would, for the next meeting, I would recommend, if we want to do that, I would say that we add it as an action item to see if we want to be able to move forward with meeting in person or keep it as virtual. So we do have to follow unfortunately, the Brown Act with that just came to light just literally earlier today to me. So we can put that as a future agenda item that we can vote to see if we want to meet in person. That would take place in January 2023. Obviously, we don't meet in December. We can add that to the next agenda item. We can talk about that, and as we get to the next future agenda items, Dan, so we can add that to it. And also, it's been, I want to say, asked to discuss about this is like the other advisory councils and to Rec and Parks meet quarterly, like the Virginia Avenue Park Advisory Board, and I believe the Southern California Aquatics, it's GAC, I could be wrong. They meet quarterly as well. We've been asked to potentially look at following that as well and meeting quarterly too, which we can discuss at potentially do that as an action item as well, Dan. So.
Okay.
So, I mean, we can add that into there. I think next meeting will still have to be virtually because we still have to vote, but we can move to meeting in person starting in January.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, let's put it on the agenda next for November, and then
that's good. I'm excited about that because I think we have better spirited discussions when we meet in person. So, and it's good to get everybody together. Location TBD. Obviously, I'll have to figure. Ideally, we'd like to continue at Virginia Avenue Park if we do happen to meet in person. But like I said, that's up to the FSAC to decide on that. So if we can move to meeting in person, then we can continue to do that, or we can do that. Or if we meet virtually, we can continue to do it.
Okay, so those will be 2 action items to vote on in the November meeting.
That will be correct, sir.
Okay, great.
And I believe that is it for us in regards to our city staff update. I think I covered just about everything, and Micah covered the revenue part. We were working on that a bit all day and how to break that down. So Micah's a little more eloquent with the numbers, so I'm a little more the fields guy, and he's a little more the numbers guy. So I'm glad we were able to get that information. So it was good. It's appreciate you asking that, Dan, because that's not data we have been asked to bring up. So I'm glad it was a benefit to the group. So it was good to know, and we'll see what happens as we move forward. So.
Okay, great. No, I understand the challenges that every department has, especially before 2020 when there were certain revenue goal setting agendas by the former city manager. I don't know, David White doesn't seem to be on the same agenda as that. So I'm hoping that I just wanted to know, and I think it's important that our group knows that we're contributing to the city, but that we're also, providing a good service for our community.
Absolutely.
Stephen, I guess you would be up on number 2.
Yeah, I'll try to go quickly. What you saw where there was a presentation for FSAC, then there was a presentation of Memorial Park at Recreation Parks, and then that was brought to City Council. So that took up a lot of the last Recreation Parks meeting. But another thing we did, we started to break out and talk about future agenda items that we want to really pursue for Recreation and Parks. And as you guys know, it's not just fields, it's also community gardens, pickleball, Palisades Park. It's everything we're trying to get on the list, get it discussed, and get a higher profile for the committee, as well as for the things that we want to talk about with field sports. One thing that you guys had brought up in the last FSAC meeting that I put on the agenda for discussion, for future discussion with Recreation and Parks, is that with the increase of Samuel High's usage of their own fields, for instance, Friday Night Football, and the hiring of an athletic director to grow middle school sports, there's going to be a domino effect. They're going to probably want back more of their field space. And you talk about youth sports at youth times. Well, school sports at school times means like right after school. You can imagine that football field finally getting used again at Jams, or the football field at Lincoln being used again for whatever future iteration of middle school scholastic sports is. And that has a domino effect because right now, JV soccer from Samuel High goes over to Jams and practices. That means JV soccer is going to have to practice somewhere and so on. I know Eric is nodding his head, but there is a domino effect, and it's going to affect the allocation of field sports. What I took on for Recreation and Parks is to pull all of the joint use agreements, the master facility use agreements, the one from 2005, the one from 2018, the one from 2012, and the one that was just agreed upon for 2022 in July. And my task is to take all that and essentially do an analysis, summarize it. Where did we start? Where did we get to? How much money is passing hands? What are the expectations back to the city? Like, what does the city get back, and what was that set to be? And what maybe changed this past time? For example, there's a new pool in town, and that made its way into the joint use agreement. I don't think we've started booking that yet, but we could theoretically because it's part of the joint use agreement now. I wanted to get all of that in a digestible document, a presentation for Recreation Parks, but also for everybody here, so that we can know the history of it. Like, what was it before? What is it now? And then when we ask the question, well, what does this mean to have an expanded middle school sports program? Or now that Samuel High is back on campus, what does that mean? All of it it's just like what Micah and Eric did, which is, if we don't have any data, if we don't have any background or context, it's very difficult. We feel like we're losing field space, or we feel like, this is changing. But if we know what the deal was and what the deal is, then we can better understand what's happening. So what I hope to have by the time we meet again is some versions, maybe a draft version of that. And I got a lot of detail. I got all kinds of documents because I pulled public records requests from Santa Monica School District, as well as the city, as well as from friends who have been paying attention to this all along. So I've got a ton of stuff to go through. I mean, I can't just read it and tell you what I think. But I'm going to try to do some analysis, and I'll do that analysis, and I'll be happy to share all the documents that I get. But I got all the city dump today, and I got the school district dump last week. And therefore, all that to say is it's on the minds of folks. Another one of my fellow commissioners, Albin, who's also running for city council, it's on his mind. He's digging into it too, from a slightly different angle. So yeah, it's stuff like this is on the agenda. People are paying attention. I just want to let you know that was something y'all brought up last time that I'm putting on the agenda for Rec and Parks, and then digging in, and we'll work with staff and everybody, but also just I'm going to read everything first.
Thank you for requesting that. We David from Records Management gave that to us, so we got that information to us as quickly as we can.
Yeah, and like I say, because I pulled from a couple of different sources, I'm also very curious to see if it's a little different, the documents I got from one place versus the other. It's very possible. I've got a bunch of different documents. It's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah. Hey, Stephen, thanks a lot for that, because that's huge. I got a lot of different documents from the city and from the district also, and Cary, and a lot of them are unsigned. So it seems like those joint use agreements should be pretty easy to put your hands onto, and that's not been my experience. So kudos to you, man, for getting those documents. That's great. I have one other question. Do you know who the new sports AD is over at that they announced that?
I have only insider information, but I know that somebody's been hired. One of the candidates, one of the final candidates, has been hired, but it's not announced until Monday.
Oh, okay, great.
And remember, this is that position that it's a contract position. It's being funded for 2 years by Santa Monica Education Foundation. And then if it all goes well, then it turns into a full-time position. But I think because it was a contract position, it probably limited the applicant pool a little bit. I just happen to know that the person who was hired, I've heard they're great, they're enthusiastic. I just know nothing else. Like like I say, I don't have actual insider information. I just know that it kind of happened, and that Monday is when we should find out.
That's great, and thanks to Smith for getting us funds to actually bring somebody in.
Eric, do you have any insight?
I can verify. Well, yeah, I think we're on the same page, Stephen. I found out about it. And I heard they were. I know the two candidates personally, so. And you're right, it was a little limited in regards to candidates because it was basically a contracted position, and they can get rid of you basically at any time. So that turned away a lot of people. So if it was a certified and district position, I think you would have had tons and tons of people.
Yeah. So I think we'll know on Monday. But I think the most important part about that is that the district is serious about growing these interscholastic sports. Even I played middle school football. I played elementary school football. So it was a new thing for me to move to California. And I guess because of Prop 13, et cetera, it wasn't my junior high against somebody else's junior high. It was all either AYSO or club or nothing.
And something else in mind, they also do have a joint use agreement with the Boys and Girls Club to be able to do some after-school programming as well for basically taking over the defunct CREST program now. So there's a lot of variables in play for the school district, as you mentioned, and the domino effect, which that's why I kept nodding my head, because as we get closer, then we'll really know what's going to be happening probably in the coming year in regards to that. And that's where Brian and Carrie and all their team will be able to really get into detail on what exactly that entails and the domino effect it creates. So
anyway, that's my update.
Did district staff, did they come to city staff or any of the commissions and ask for recommendations? I guess Eric, you would know that from the city side. And
I've known Brian quite a bit apart. He did tell me they asked a few different people to apply. I know that in regards to that, but in regards to like Stephen had mentioned, it's the Ed Foundation, and a lot of people didn't want to take that chance, and we'll see whoever the candidate selected. Like I said, if they're not happy, they'll probably pull a quick trigger. It's going to be a lot of work, and the person they selected is going to have a challenge ahead because this is something that's very driven. So, and it's going to happen. So I just, what it entails, we don't know, but I think Stephen's in the right ballpark in regards to the domino effect. Like I said, it could create. I just heard about the publication. It didn't really go out and send a blast. I didn't see anything go out on the website in regards to this. I don't also follow the Ed Foundation website, so they might have publicized it on there a little more than say the school district website, if that makes sense.
Got it. And Stephen, on your side, was there any reach out, in the summer when they were looking?
I'm a fairly recent add to Rec and Parks, so I don't remember it coming up as hey, everybody, do you want to refer anybody to this? I just happen to have other points of contact for things that are SMEF related or sports related in the city. But yeah, I didn't, and in fact, I would say that I'm not sure the joint use agreement ever kind of got, presented to Rec and Parks. So that's part of it. Also, is I'm going to do the research and try to get our own Rec and Parks Commission up to date on everything. It's I love what Shannon said. If we can be data driven, it helps everything. It helps us answer the questions that our constituency has. It gives us an argument when we need to make an argument. The more we know, the more we know. It's G.I. Joe. It's red lasers, blue lasers, 50% each. And yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thanks, man. Okay. Is that it, Stephen?
Yeah, I didn't have anything else
Okay.
important.
FSAC members, anybody have anything that they want to share or update? Everybody's season's going along great. We're starting to get back to, the new normal, and everybody's cool.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Well, that was a quick one. Okay. And then I don't think is anybody here from the district?
I do not see anybody here. Usually they reach out to me if they have any check-in for that. I know they have a lot of stuff going on too this week. So if anything, I'll reach out to Brian, and if he has an update, I can have him send something to me, and then I can share with the group if that makes sense. So if he has any update on some other stuff, I can at least send it via email or something. So.
Yeah, I'm sure they, or it can wait until the next meeting if he wants to attend and give an update. It's,
whatever the consensus is. So if he has something that wants to be shared, I'll run it by you, and if you want to, we can send it. We can send it.
Okay, great. All right, and then. Was there any written communications that we got from the public?
No, nothing received.
Okay, and then the next meeting will be via Blue Jean, I guess, on the 2nd of November.
That is correct, and we will. Yes, it'll be virtual on the 2nd, and we already discussed some future meeting agenda items. And if anybody else wants anything to be added other than the stuff we had talked about, Dan? I mean, I was thinking as we gear into the year, maybe we ask someone from public safety to come out to give a brief update on some stuff. Usually, ideally, I like to get them out quarterly for the group, for the better of the group, And I think last time we had Halima back in, I want to say May, June. So it might be good to get them out, or someone from public safety thing, to be able to give some updates and anything else. I know. For the group here, especially for our schools, we've had a lot of unfortunately some sad news in regards to a lot of the fentanyl stuff going on, and that impacts a lot of the youth in Southern California. That might be good to be able to give some tips and talk about some of that stuff, because a lot of our organizations, obviously high schools all the way up to 12th grade, so anything's going on or anything that they hear, and any safety tips in regards to anything going around our community would be of benefit, I think, to all of our groups in our communities.
Yeah, I think the district and the middle schools, the high schools, and then even the private schools in the last 3 weeks, all of them. In fact, there was a seminar at St. Monica's tonight about this very issue, but I'm doing this. But I think everybody's been addressing it from middle school to high school at this point, which is good. Does anybody have anything else or anything they want to add to the next meeting? Okay, if not, I move to adjourn. Anybody want a second?
Hold on, Dan, 1 second. I've got a message from Michael Balsley. I think he's having some problems with his microphone. He was wanting to contribute something.
Oh, sure.
Michael, can you talk at all? For some reason, I see you unmuted, but we can't hear you, so. Okay. So if anything, I'll see if Michael has anything to add that I can maybe share with you directly. We can share with the group if there's anything that's present.
Is Michael the 646-729?
No, he's got his own thing on there. He changed his name. So.
Okay, I don't see him listed as.
He's listed Michael Balsley, on the presenters and attendees.
Oh, I don't see that on mine.
He's a late add to it, but I see him online, but he's present. So.
Oh, okay, I see him. Got it. All right. Another click that I need to know.
I'm telling you, it's like all these all these platforms are all tricky. Like you go on from Teams to everything else, it's always different. So.
Okay. Anything else then? Anybody else? Going once, going twice, going 3 times? Everybody, thank you for your time. And anybody want to second the meeting closing?
I will.
All right, great. right. Thank you all. Thank you, Eric. Again, thanks to Micah too. I know that you guys did a lot of work putting that stuff together.
Not a problem. And thank you.
Bye.